So you want to start dressing vintage. So this will probably be a little series that I make about kind of the whole shebang about vintage style. Specifically, I'm going to focus on the 1950s. I'll probably do maybe some other videos about the other decades, but 1950s specifically was an interesting decade because of all the changes that went on and what was considered popular for women to wear. So this is not about me saying you can't wear this or you can't wear this. You know, I'm not gatekeeping anything. This is more about focusing on what was accurate, authentic to the period, and what you can do to achieve that look if you want to. So I'm going to start by saying this right here, that's not what they wore. That's not it. This is called rockabilly, which is a modern little twist on what they did wear, or at least things that a certain group of people wore back then. But that's not what the normal person would have worn in the 1950s. I'm going to start this video by focusing mainly on foundation wear, also known as lingerie. Not this type of lingerie, more like this type of lingerie. So very different, or yeah, pretty different. Foundation wear in the 1950s was all about achieving a very specific silhouette. The silhouette was everything, and the silhouette for that time was the hourglass. Of course, not everyone has a natural hourglass figure, and the foundation wear is the way that people achieved that figure. If you notice, basically, if you look at any magazine, any pictures from the 1950s, the women will have that figure. And of course, it's possible for everyone to have the hourglass figure. So basically, they used very specific lingerie to kind of shape their bodies, kind of mold their physique. And the way they did that was with the bullet bra. And everyone knows about the bullet bra, it's kind of infamous. They were not as dramatic as the media makes it out to believe. They were certainly pointy. They were usually made out of satin, so they looked very futuristic, very shiny, almost metallic. But they were made out of satin, so they could be as smooth as possible. And as comfortable as possible. So there were mainly two types of bras. There was just the normal one, and then there was the long line, which went down your rib cage. So it kind of squeezes your rib cage a little bit, brings in your waist a little bit. And the bullet bra, some of them had some interesting additives. One of them being these pads that you would, I guess, push in or attach to the bra, which had a fake nipple on them, so they could be more visible under clothes, if you can imagine that. That wasn't exactly extremely popular. They were somewhat popular, but not extremely popular. The regular bullet bras were what most people used. The Whirlpool design was very, very popular, meaning the bra was constructed with stitches in a whirlpool formation to form the cup. There were other ones that were more kind of like, I don't know, how do you do it? Like this. So it would just pop out like this. But the bullet bras were important for the overall silhouette that I told you about, which is the hourglass. So the bullet bra alone is not going to achieve that. You could wear the bullet bra all you want, you're not going to automatically turn into a Vogue model. The next step, arguably the most important step, is the girdle. Now, girdles were very stiff. Now, in the 1950s, they didn't have Spanx, for example, and girdles were basically the equivalent of Spanx. They functioned to smooth out your body as much as possible. So the goal of that is to make your clothes look more flattering, so there's no bumps or anything. Very smooth, sleek silhouette. The girdles would usually come up to quite high on the waist, cinch the waist a little bit. Girdles were not meant for cinching alone, no. Again, mainly meant for smoothing. The girdles would come down the hips, and usually they would have little hooks for your garters, your stockings. Not all of them, but the great majority of them. Then, Besides the girdle, not all women wore girdles, because like I said, it was mainly meant for just smoothing out, extra rolls of skin, so you have a smooth silhouette. Now, for women who didn't need that, if they were toned already, then they could focus more on cinching the waist. Cinching the waist was achieved in different ways. There was the corselet, which, as you can imagine, is kind of like a more wimpy version of the corset. More pliable, more flexible for the waist, and you tighten it up with some strings. The kind of preferred method for cinching the waist was the waspy, which was a wasp waist, sort of kind of like a corset, but very small and made of more flexible material. Still pretty stiff. I mean, it usually has little bones, usually made out of like steel or things like that, so it could really mold your waist. And that was the most popular kind of device, I suppose, for shrinking the waist. And there were also full-on corsets, usually smaller than what you would think of in the 1800s. Full-on corsets were not usually used for everyday use. They were definitely used for formal occasions, like you're going to some fancy dance or something, or for models, because models, they really wanted to get as small of a waist as possible. But corsets were not really used in everyday use. They mainly used maybe the waspy if they were more fashionable, or just the girdle. And so the bullet bra plus the waspy, or in general waist cincher, that would generally achieve the desired silhouette that was very popular during the 1950s. And that silhouette was first popularized in 1947 by Christian Dior, the Dior's new look. That really is what started it all. But working down, the hips really were meant to be symmetrical with the upper part of the body. A lot of women didn't have to do anything special. They already had good hips to start with. But for those with smaller hips, hip pads were a thing. Usually they were done more for models, where they would add certain pads under the skirt to add more of that hourglass physique. Then there were the garter belts, which held up women's stockings, and women almost always, 99% of the time, wore stockings. I'll probably make an entirely separate video just about stockings, because they were so important to just life back then, for quite a long time. So, like I said, girdles often had hooks or attachments for the garters to attach to the stockings. Sometimes, if you weren't wearing a girdle, you'd have to wear a garter belt, which was a separate thing that went over the underwear to hold the stockings. And stockings back then were 100% nylon. They did not have spandex like we have now. So if you didn't have the garter belt to hold up the stockings, they would just fall off of your legs and just roll down, versus today where they just hold in place because of that spandex. Now those are the main things that make up the foundation wear of what the majority of women wore during the 1950s. However, there are a few additional things to keep in mind. Petticoats were a thing. Petticoats, sometimes called crinolines. Basically those fluffy things that you put under a skirt to give it more body. Now, those are more of a special occasion sort of thing. Not everyone wore them, especially not on a daytime basis. What they did wear, pretty much all the time, every day, are slips. Slips were put over everything else. They kind of look like a nightgown, and usually satin, something very, very smooth, so it doesn't bunch up under the rest of your clothing, because you would put the slip on and then you would put on your blouse or your skirt or your dress or something. So there were two types of slips: the full slip, which would of course go over your whole body, and then the half slip, which was just a skirt. The skirt slip was used for a one-piece set of clothing like a dress. Meanwhile, the full slip was used for a two-piece set, so like a blouse and a skirt, for instance. And they were not meant to be seen under clothing. If they showed throughout your clothing, or your slip strap showed, not acceptable. And because they were not meant to be seen, they were actually quite brightly colored a lot of the time. They were pink, yellow, blue, lots of pastel colors especially. But yeah, they're pretty brightly colored. If they were too long and they showed, falling under your skirt or your dress, they would usually have to be cut and hemmed up so you couldn't see them. And they also added to help the overall smoothness of the silhouette. And of course, at the end of the day, not everyone looked like Vogue models, but everyone did look nice. Everyone did take time out of their day to get dressed, I suppose. But that's pretty much all I have to say for this video about foundation wear specifically. If you have any opinions or questions about this, you can leave those down in the comments section down below. If you liked the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.